I'm Daniel Burrows. I'm the founder and CEO of Truckabs. My background is in, it started off in climate research, actually at the Grantham Institute, and then I moved into venture capital, and then I went and did my MBA at Stanford, and I founded Truckabs out of Stanford as my way I could have the biggest impact on emissions. And so thank you so much for inviting me here to a topic that's very dear to my heart. I want to start off with a question. So if you open up your iPads, because I think it goes to the heart of how transport is a complicated topic. So open up the polling question here. And the question is,
there we go.
That's it, mobility and transport. Which is better for emissions, an electric car charged by a US coal power plant or a traditional petrol car? And I asked this because I didn't know the answer to this before I looked for it. A couple more seconds. So we're going to take
changing.
Changing. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. All right, so it is, in fact, electric car charged by a US coal plant is actually very close, but it's actually slightly marginally more efficient. And there's a paper by Nature which I can share for those interested, but essentially, if you concentrate the generation, if you make it a clean coal power plant, or cleaner, I mean, as most efficient as you can be, and that's why the US is important in that title, actually, because in that study, that was where it was done. You also get regenerative braking from cars, and from electric cars and other things. So in total, it is slightly better, but it's very marginal. But that sets up what I want to say is it's complicated in transportation. And transportation isn't just, and we can go back to my slides, and transportation isn't just about the modes of transport, it's a big part of it is how you power the transport, which goes into production, energy generation. So it's all interconnected. So I think that the panel set up this talk very well. So if we go here, briefly about Truckabs. I founded this as my personal way to have the biggest impact I could have on climate emissions. After I was studying climate models, I was convinced that something needed to be done. I was convinced that people weren't prepared to pay too much of a green premium or green additional money for environmental reasons. And so I wanted to go into the private sector to build products that were cheaper, that people would buy because they worked better and improved the bottom line. Truckabs, for me, was I focused on Class 8 trucks in the US. It's about 9% of US carbon emissions. And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We believe as a company we can save 100 million tons of carbon emissions per year. And right now our units are doing 4 million miles over the road. What do I mean by our units? I have a quick video.
This problem is as old as physics itself. Cab trailer gaps create turbulence. Turbulence causes drag. Drag taxes engines, and engines burn more fuel. The bottom line erodes as carbon levels rise. To solve this nagging industry challenge once and for all, Truckwing's hardware engineers and software developers set a high bar. The ideal solution would feature a new-to-the-world collapsible wing assembly, which meant getting the design right. It would open and close completely on its own, which meant getting the autonomous controls right. And it would provide over 1 million miles of service, which meant getting the engineering right. Our team of transportation experts also had a hard rule. Systems didn't just have to work, they had to perform. First in simulations, then in test environments, and finally on the open road, so that the solution was bulletproof. Trusted by top fleets for over 500 million miles, Truckwings delivers significant fleet NPG improvements, consistently meets ROI targets, and even quantifies CO2 offsets for ESG programs, while also laying down the uptime markers that industry leaders demand. If your goal is evidence-based performance, Truckwings is taking flight, because fleets with wings have more than just a story to tell. They have a hero to point at in the world. no matter where you're headed next. Truck Wings will get you there.
So for all of you operating long-duty, heavy-duty trucks in the US, please reach out. I have several in my hotel room. I can provide samples. Just to put that in perspective, 5% of fuel savings for long-haul trucks would equate to about 0.5% of total US carbon emissions could be reduced through the use of technologies like that. And our customers often don't believe in climate change. Often they're buying it not because of the emissions, they're buying it simply to improve their bottom line of their operating costs. That's actually changing very rapidly, which has been an interesting thing. So to put in perspective, I want to broaden it now to transportation. So global emissions about 59 gigatons, transportation about 8 of those. A gigaton is about 200 million elephants. And so it's a large amount that we have to tackle. And the other problem is that it's getting worse in terms of, although efficiencies are increasing, the amount of stuff we're moving, the miles we're traveling is also increasing. So in kind of a business as usual, it would be pretty static. And so in order to reduce that, it's hard, and there will be a plan I'll lay out in a second, but we think we can get from 8 to about 2 gigatons, and the rest of it would have to be taken up by carbon capture and storage and other things to get to full net zero. One of the challenges is you've got to take your power source with you. And so in transportation, the big story is electrification. If you can electrify it, and then you can make the electric source green, then you can essentially get to net zero. However, batteries are fantastic, and they're getting better, but the energy density of a battery versus a traditional fuel source is very different. It's about 60 times different. Electric motors are twice as efficient, so that narrows the gap to maybe 30 times. But that's still essentially, if you go through the different types of transportation, presents a challenge for certain areas. We're pretty good for passenger cars. You see that adoption rising rapidly. Buses, intercity buses inside cities work well. Intercity buses, coaches, not so much. Trucks, not so much. Ships are struggling. Planes, you can maybe fly for an hour on an electric plane, but not further. And so, how you solve this problem is different in each of those sections, and how much you can decarbonize is different for each of those sections. So I'll leave you, I want to leave time for questions, so I'll leave you this up here. This is John Doerr, a famous Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He came up with an OKR thing. It's a structured way of looking at problems. He has a book which goes to, as a world, how we can get to net zero. He does have a section on transportation, so I put it up here. This is not my work, but this is how he believes we can get from 8 to 2. And I think if I was going to look at these, the first 3 basically lead to 1.4, which is the miles. 50% of miles driven on the world's roads are electric by 2040, 95 by 2050. I think we can get there on those. I'm more concerned with planes and ships, just because of people's willingness to pay that green tax and where they are. So with that, I'd love to take any questions.